On July 27, 1998, at around 5 a.m., a deputy from the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to the residence of Cynthia Campbell in response to a reported disturbance. Campbell told authorities she had heard commotion coming from behind her house. When the deputy went to investigate, he discovered that one of the windows had been broken and found a chrome lug nut lying in the bushes beneath it. Before the deputy, identified as Lynch, departed the scene, Campbell's neighbor, Norman Grimm Jr., invited her to come over to his house for a cup of coffee. Later that same morning, two employees from Campbell's law office arrived at her home. They noticed her car parked in the driveway, but they were unable to locate her anywhere inside the house. Concerned, they contacted the sheriff's office, which sent deputies to the location to investigate further. When officers questioned Grimm about Campbell's disappearance, they observed reddish-brown stains on both his shoulder and the cut-off denim shorts he was wearing. When asked about the marks, Grimm claimed that they were not blood, but rather primer paint from his vehicle. That afternoon, two fishermen made a horrific discovery. They pulled a human body from the water. The body, later identified as Cynthia Campbell, had been tightly wrapped in a bedsheet, a shower curtain, and secured with masking tape. An autopsy revealed that Campbell had suffered severe injuries. She had deep bruises and abrasions on her shoulders, face, and lips, injuries that matched the kind of damage a hammer could inflict. In addition to the blunt force trauma, she had been stabbed 11 times in the chest. 7 of those stab wounds penetrated her heart. The combination of the stabbing and the head injuries ultimately caused her death. Earlier that day, a former co-worker of Norman Grimm spotted him parked along the Pensacola Bay Bridge. His car doors and trunk were both wide open, which drew attention. Not long after, surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store captured Grimm walking inside the store shortly after he had been seen parked on the bridge. Investigators later uncovered a substantial amount of forensic evidence inside Norman Grimm's home. In the kitchen, they found 2 damp mops stained with blood, small traces of blood on the floor and cabinets, and 2 bloody fingerprints left on a box of trash bags. Inside the kitchen trash can, there was a stripped pillowcase marked with blood. The dining room also showed blood spots, and in the living room, authorities discovered a pair of blue jean shorts smeared with blood, a pair of blood-stained athletic shoes, and a length of rope that perfectly matched the type used to bind Campbell's body. The search continued to the back porch, where investigators located even more evidence, including a piece of green carpet identical to the one used to wrap Campbell's body, a pair of prescription glasses that matched her prescription, and a cooler filled with incriminating items. Inside that cooler were a steak knife, a blood-stained piece of cloth, a pair of men's underwear, a tampon marked with blood, a roll of masking tape, and a hammer covered in blood. Testing later confirmed that all of the blood and genetic material found on these items matched Cynthia Campbell's unique DNA profile. At the time Cynthia Campbell was killed, Norman Grimm was actually out on parole for a 1990 burglary conviction from Texas. His background in Florida also revealed a long and troubling criminal record. Long before the murder took place, Grimm had already spent time behind bars in the state for multiple offenses, showing a consistent pattern of criminal behavior. On February 2, 2001, Grimm submitted a direct appeal to the Florida Supreme Court, arguing that the trial court had made several key errors. He claimed the court mishandled the presentation of mitigating evidence and testimony and wrongfully barred the introduction of certain hearsay statements that the victim had made before her death. On October 3, 2002, the Florida Supreme Court upheld both his convictions and sentences. A few months later, on March 20, 2003, the court released a revised opinion, but once again reaffirmed the same outcome. When the Office of the Attorney General argued that the death penalty was warranted in Grimm's case, they described him as someone who, despite some personal issues, had led a fairly normal life. They wrote that he has had some problems, but he enjoyed a largely normal childhood, he was able to work and is of normal intelligence. Born in 1960, Norman Grimm joined the Navy shortly after graduating from high school, but his service was cut short when he was discharged for unspecified misconduct, according to statements from his family. After leaving the military, he moved back in with his mother and stepfather and briefly attended Pensacola Junior College, now Pensacola State College. However, it wasn't long before he began running into trouble with the law. In 1983, Grimm was convicted in Escambia County for a series of crimes that included unarmed robbery, armed burglary, kidnapping, and aggravated battery. He served several years in prison before being released in 1990, according to Florida Department of Corrections records. Following his release, Grimm relocated to Texas in search of employment, but once again found himself behind bars, this time for robbing a store. After serving his sentence there, he was paroled and allowed to transfer his supervision back to Florida. Upon his return, Grimm found steady work in the fabrication department of a local manufacturing company, where he reportedly performed well and was considered a reliable and hard-working employee for about 4 years. In 1997, Grimm got married and settled into a home in Milton, Florida. However, the marriage didn't last long. The couple divorced not long after moving in. Living nearby was Cynthia Campbell, the woman who would later become his victim. We know now that before killing Cynthia Campbell, Norman Grimm already had a long and violent criminal record as detailed in court documents. One of the earliest incidents dates back to September 9, 1982. A Pensacola police officer testified that a woman reported being attacked on her way to work. According to her statement, a man got out of his car, grabbed her, and began choking her. She managed to break free and run, but he caught up, choked her again, and forced her into his car. He threatened to kill her if she didn't stop screaming. Thinking fast, the woman told him that her purse was still lying on the ground and that if he killed her, it would be found as evidence. When the man stepped out to retrieve it, she slid into the driver's seat and sped off. The attacker was later identified as Norman Grimm. In another disturbing case from the same area, a man looked into his bathroom mirror one night and saw another man standing right behind him. Startled, he chased the intruder out of his home and immediately called the police. Moments later, he heard screams coming from the neighboring house. Next door, a woman had woken up to the lights flickering on and off. When she got out of bed, she saw a man with a knife approaching her. She fought back, suffering a cut on her chin before breaking free and running for help. Her brother, who had been sleeping on the couch, woke up to her screams and chased the intruder out of the house. In yet another violent episode, Grimm attacked a 14-year-old girl as she walked to school. He dragged her into a wooded area nearby, but her screams caught the attention of a security guard who ran toward them and scared him off. The girl was left bloodied and bruised, her earrings ripped from her ears and her hands and elbows cut during the struggle. When police finally arrested Grimm for this series of attacks, they found him carrying 2 stolen firearms and 35 rounds of ammunition that had been taken from a residential burglary. If carried out, Grimm's execution will be the 15th in the state of Florida this year, with a 16th one already scheduled for November. DeSantis signed the death warrant for Brian Frederick Jennings, a man who murdered a 6-year-old girl back in 1979. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.